Spain joins Canada in outlawing what they call conversion therapy, or more accurately, helping people to live biblically. Doug Ford warns about the extreme far right, while a Toronto University, that's the city in the province of Ontario where Doug Ford is premier, calls for outright Soviet style governance. The EU releases a report against religious extremism, or more accurately, biblical Christianity. It appears the left is ramping up their vitriol and hatred for Christians, and they're increasing their urgency by calling for us to be exposed and lose any financial benefits that we may receive. And friends, whatever you do, don't be like Connor. You'll see what I mean soon enough. It's July 25th. I'm Andrew DeBartolo. That's Matt Hallick, not Connor. This is Liberty Dispatch.
Hey, and welcome back, friends, to the Liberty Dispatch, where we bring you Canadian conservative news and analysis from an unapologetically Christian perspective. Make sure you get over to our Substack page. Be sure to go over there to get all things LD at ldcanada.substack.com, including Andrew's latest banger of an article, if I don't say so myself. You wrote it, but for us. Anyways, Canadian Wokenomics. Go check it out. It is one of your best, Andrew. So, if you want to get everything that we're doing, including full access to our extended interviews. We just had some really great interviews with friends of the show, Randy Hillier. Also, who else? We had John Speed on. We have a really banger one that's actually appropriate for what we're talking about with the woke right with Joe Boot, Dr. Joe Boot.
Yep.
Where we kind of get into the philosophy of that stuff. So it's really important stuff. We have some really, really great episodes. I know John Carpe, a friend of the show, he's been everywhere lately. I see him on so many things. And all these people, they come on our show first before they Bruce Party's the same way.
I might reach out to John because the Tamara Leach, Chris Barber kind of hearing is almost done or done, depending on how long it goes, and then we'll probably hear sentencing in August. But I had a discussion with Mike Shooten, who's the executive director of ARPA Canada. We're going to be dropping that hopefully this Saturday.
Great organization.
Have a discussion with Jonathan Wellham from Rocklinc on the article that he released recently.
We got some smart friends, Andrew.
Decay, equals currency collapse. We do have some smart friends because Matt, I think we're some smart guys.
Well, now I just surround myself by good talent.
One of the reasons why we're smart is because we have, not only in our show but in our actual life, we've partnered with people with a biblical worldview, especially as it pertains to finances and wealth management. And so we have to talk about our friends over at Rocklinc Investment Partners. Even during the relaxed pace of summer, for some, maybe for some of you, it's not as relaxed, but the slightly different pace of summer, it's a great time to focus on your finances, right? As you're thinking about the fall, as you're maybe halfway through the calendar year, examining your budget, it's a great time to think about spending and saving and how much we're putting away, how much we're investing. So why not connect with our trusted partners at Rocklinc Investment Partners to safeguard your family's future and protect your hard-earned money from global economic challenges. With years of proven expertise, Rocklinc knows how to deliver results. Contact them at 905-631-5462 or send them an email, info@rocklinc.com. That's link with a C. I just had a great conversation with my buddy over at Rocklinc, who manages my investments and my savings and kind of my family's future, just kind of assessing where we're at and how much money we're putting into this and that. And I mean, I reach out. It's a Christian brother. We have a great conversation. Love the guys over at Rocklinc. They're definitely who you need to be connecting with as you consider your wealth and the future of your finances for your family, because it appears that there is a move on the progressive left to come at the biblical Christians. And one of the ways they want to come at them, obviously, is their wallet. Get rid of charitable status. You can't have any more benefits. You can no
Debanking
longer receive debanking, right? This
happens.
appears to be a play. So it is incumbent upon you to be responsible for your wealth and for the wealth of your family. Now, we're going to rewind a little bit to set up this episode, because we were thinking about the show today. There were a couple stories. Some are maybe a month old, some are relatively new. And we decided this needs to be the theme of this episode. So we're gonna go back in time just a little bit. Okay, it's 2021. It's early in 2021 in January, and Canada passes Bill C4. It receives royal assent, and Bill C4, our audience is well familiar with it. Outlaws conversion therapy, but really what it outlaws is counseling people to obey God and to abandon sexual sin.
Yeah.
That's really what they're outlawing, and they call what we believe harmful myths and stereotypes. Now,
And
to my
Andrew, just
knowledge,
before you move on,
oh,
they had every opportunity to amend the bill to make the language more targeted and more specific, but they decidedly kept it as general and vague as possible, because vague
yes,
law is bad law, and they want bad law in order to be able to punish those who don't share their own worldview, right? Because
yeah.
bad law becomes a tool of the totalitarian.
Mm-hmm. So, to my knowledge, I don't know anyone yet in Canada who's been who's been punished for engaging in conversion therapy, and that might be because they're waiting for the right time to uncork that bottle, to line up other legislation, and maybe, as we're going to see, there appears to be a push in the media for the demonizing and the villainizing of Christians. So maybe they're waiting for that to be ramped up all the more. But however, around the world, other nations are following suit, and they're ramping up the hostility towards Christians, toward the Word of God. In fact, Spain, right, a nation known for bullfighting, a romantic language, a really good Malbec wine. What else are they?
Tapas,
Zorro,
tapas.
Zorro
Um. Oh,
dances. The flamenco. They're known for the flamenco,
and
right?
being
I don't know if
be
anyone from Spain,
and
but
being extraordinarily wealthy, but frittering it all away because they didn't like to work.
yeah, and sending Christopher Columbus,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. There's.
So
I mean.
Spain, yeah, I don't have a lot of bad things to say about old Christoph. He was Italian. So Spain has just voted overwhelmingly to pass kind of stage one, the first bit of legislation that will also punish pastors and Christians for counseling people to abandon sexual deviancy and obey Christ. So here's a little bit of a report on the matter from CBN, and then we're going to jump into what the actual legislation is.
The Socialist Parliamentary Group in Spain proposed an
Those
amendment
damn socialists, Andrew.
criminalizing LGBTQ plus conversion therapy. Well, on June 24th, the bill overwhelmingly passed Spain's Congress of Deputies. What does this mean for pastors sharing biblical truth about gender and orientation? So, Billy, what do you think this means?
Well, it means that you could go to jail, essentially. And here's the thing. If you're a pastor or you're a person who's out there trying to help people who are struggling with various issues, this is pretty broad from what we understand here, because you're talking about sexual orientation, sexual identity, gender expression. That gets into the transgender issue, right? So if you're doing anything using a quote unquote therapy, conversion therapy, meaning you're trying to help somebody who has unwanted emotions cope with them or deal with them, then you can find yourself in a substantial amount of trouble. Well, and I have the language in front of me here. I think it's a little wordy, but I think we should read it so people understand what the translation of this amendment actually is. It says, anyone who applies or practices on a person, acts, methods, programs, techniques, or procedures of aversion or conversion, whether psychological, physical, pharmacological, that word always gets me, or of any other nature aimed at modifying, repressing, eliminating, or denying his sexual orientation, sexual identity, or gender expression, shall be punished with imprisonment of 6 months to 2 years, with impairment of their bodily integrity or their physical or mental health, or with serious impairment of their moral integrity. It seems to be that if the victim is a child, or acts are committed in a way that is profiting or using violence, intimidation, deception, these are very broad terms, right? So when you hear that, it's like, wow, anything that a Christian ministry is doing to try to help people in these areas
can be criminal, right? That's ultimately what that amounts to. So it is eerily similar in that way, Andrew, than to Bill C-4, and the purposeful vagueness is not an accident on any of this legislation. So Protestia, Andrew, reports on this story as follows. Introduced by the Socialist Parliamentary Group, the GPS, and supported by multiple parties by a vote of 311 to 33. Whoa, that's humongous. That's a humongous majority. Spain's lower house passed the initial stage of a legislative amendment that would penalize conversion therapies aimed at eliminating or denying sexual orientation, sexual identity, or gender expression by imposing prison terms of 6 months to 2 years. So actually not as bad as Canada as far as the punishment for those found providing such services. In Spain, conversion therapy is defined as the promotion, practice, aversion, conversion, or counter-conditioning methods, programs, or therapies, whether psychological, physical, or drug-based, that aim to modify the sexual orientation, sexual identity, or gender expression of people regardless of consent they or their legal representatives may have given. So they can't even consent to that activity, right?
This, by the way, was something when Bill C-4 originally was tabled. I think it was Bill C-6. That was the original name of it. And Bill C-6, this was before COVID. Bill C-6 was similar to Bill C-4. The only difference was Bill C-6 said if you are over the age of 18 or 25 and you are consenting to the quote-unquote conversion therapy, then you can't be punished. And then when they changed the legislation and reintroduced Bill C-4, they removed that. So Bill C-4, similar to this, says even if you're an adult that says, I want the conversion therapy, it doesn't matter. The person who provides it can still get in trouble.
And just to be clear, too, the idea that this is conversion therapy, as rightfully understood, is so asinine. Is to be
no one's doing electroshock therapy and frontal lobe removals anymore.
And that's the jamming, right? We've talked about jamming. They are purposefully taking a procedure that's not even biblical, right? It's based on the medical model of the psychology, which is totally unbiblical from start to finish. It's based off of unbiblical anthropology. It's horrible. The practices are terrible. It's silly. But they're taking these images that provoke great concern. They're provocative. They're scary. They're using that same language to then, and they're purposely then, jamming everything together and then putting it under the label that has this negative connotation. But they're doing that with language and counseling that is just appropriate and totally biblical. And that's the point, right? Now, in Spain, right now, violations of this law constitute an administrative offense, which has financial repercussions, and it's not a criminal offense, which would have penal repercussions. Don't really know how that works with threatened jail time, but nevertheless, the GPS, this is the Socialist Party, you might be reminded, says that they proposed heightening punitive measures to the level of criminal offense, which it is in Canada, because they are, this is a quote, not facing isolated cases, but rather one of the most serious forms of attack and denigration of the LGBTI, well, I guess they go by different things in Spain, community, especially due to the emergence of new forms of dissemination of these so-called therapies, such as web platforms, social networks, etc. And it clarifies that this change would elevate the punishment for practicing conversion therapy to the same sort of punishment issued for crimes relating to torture, which again,
Yeah. So
invokes,
just to clarify, presently in Spain, engaging in conversion therapy has financial repercussions. The amendment that they're making is so they
as
will
penal.
also have penal repercussions. That's what's happening.
That's why they're calling for the amendment. I got you. That makes total sense. And there you go, Andrew. They are going down the route that Canada has gone. A little less jail time, it looks like, for coming up foul. But my understanding is the law is even broader, more vague, and potentially more dangerous in some of the aspects, which could really lead to a greater increase of people falling afoul of the law. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. There's definitely a move at foot. And it's a great stark contrast to what's taking place in the United States of America as they push back wokeness. A lot of the wokies across the world, in Canada and in Spain and in various parts of Europe and in New Zealand, Australia, they're taking this as an opportunity to ramp up more of their efforts. So that's important to know.
I want to push back a little and qualify it. So because the CBN clip we played, there was a part that we didn't play where the guy said, "While so much of the world is now pushing back against this transgender madness, why is Spain doubling down?" So here's my pushback. And we can get into this maybe later after we're done, not at this point of the show. But I don't actually think that what we're seeing in the United States is a pushback against transgenderism. I think that it is just an inverted form of it, and by that I mean what I think is underfoot right now, or what I think has been going on for a while. So in the last 40 years, there has been an extreme redefinition of male, female, masculine, feminine, manhood, womanhood. And this is heightened. We see the apex of this in transianity. I think the pushback we're seeing among many, not among all, but among many, actually isn't an outright. So it's a rejection of this particular form of transianity, but I don't think it is an outright rejection of the redefinition of masculine and feminine. I think it's also redefining or establishing what male, female, masculine, feminine, gender, and sexuality is. But instead of doing it over here, it's doing it in another direction. And what we'll see a little bit in this episode, but really what we've seen in the broader culture is if your response to feminism is a kind of unbiblical patriarchy that borders on domineering, you can parse out what's better or worse, but at the end of the day, both of them are a rejection of true biblical masculinity and femininity. And I perceive a movement in the next, several decades that will be a hyper reaction to what we've seen in the sexual revolution and the apex of it in the trans madness. But I think the hyper overreaction in the culture and in many circles in the church, I don't think is actually going to be good or helpful. I think it's also going to be dangerous. And so I
Well,
think that the pushback isn't because we are establishing biblical parameters of justice and masculine and feminine. I think they're just pushing back against this particular form of
yeah.
rejecting God's design, and they're trying to establish their own version of a rejection of God's design from another side.
Yeah,
I
no,
think
and
that's kind of what's happening.
that's why we can't be reactionaries. That's why we can't be revolutionaries. That's why we can't get caught in that dialectical trap, right? And we'll actually get a big taste of the danger of that later on in the program as we kind of get further into the stories. But that is a very important point that we have to be very aware of. And as Christians, we have to understand there's a ditch on both sides, and the way of the truth is a narrow way, and we have to walk it with great caution and great faith.
Inflation through the roof.
Food costs went up 10.6% in February.
Censorship of dissident voices, freezing of bank accounts.
Justin Trudeau invoking emergency powers against the truckers. Banks can now freeze their personal accounts, the accounts of anyone linked to the Freedom Convoy.
Digital surveillance and communism spreading.
What do we want?
Basic income!
With the basic income, and I felt a sense of security because I didn't have to worry about not going hungry, and I didn't have to worry about being kicked out of my apartment.
The government is on the verge of bankruptcy, and they're coming for your money.
Canada's federal debt increasing in real time, now surpassing $1.2 trillion. This debt is draining taxpayer dollars, with interest alone costing $54 billion this year.
It's time to break free and start saving in money they can't take from you. Since 2013, the folks at Bull Bitcoin have one mission: destroy central banking. Bull Bitcoin is the most trusted Bitcoin company in Canada. They empower you to buy, sell, and pay bills with Bitcoin. They are 100% non-custodial, which means that you always maintain full control over your Bitcoin, allowing you to reclaim your financial sovereignty and secure your wealth for the future. Their customer support will assist you throughout the whole process, helping you get your hands on the hardest money ever created. Escape their financial gulag. Click on the link below and start buying Bitcoin today.
Boom, let's go. Love that,
So-
as always.
This there's a theme of this episode, and it appears that there's a ramping up of both socialism as well as a very strong opposition to the right or to conservatives and Christians in general, right? Specifically Christian belief. And so this was the COVID play. The COVID play was, we're not discriminating. Everyone needs to play by the rules. But really, this was an attack on biblical Christians, and the evidence of that is there was no greater pushback than from Christians. So we're saying we're against the far right, the extreme right, but really it's Christian belief. Now let's talk about Doug,
Your socialist Republic of Ontario.
Ford. Yeah, Doug, don't teach me how to Dougie. Doug Ford, the Ontario Functional Socialist Premier. He had some advice for the federal Conservative Party.
Don't
about
take
what they
it.
should be avoiding.
Don't take it.
So-
Run.
This is from MSN News. So this is don't teach me how to Dougie Ford saying, quote, "First of all, our family has always been staunch conservatives. We joke around. When we were all born, my 4 siblings, we had a C stamped on our forehead. We never voted anything but conservative," said the Ontario Premier. Then the advice: Conservative Party members will vote in January on whether Pierre Poilievre stays on as leader. Ford said, "It can't be one extreme or the other extreme. You can't be far left or hardcore right. I would always promote being a fiscal conservative, but you've got to have a social heart too. You can't be hardcore right. That's not Canada, hardcore right. And you can't just govern based on your personal beliefs. You have to govern based on what the people want. That's how you get elected. You can't be radical left or radical right. In Ford's view, what do people want? This is what he says. Everyone agrees we've got to be prudent fiscal managers because if we're prudent fiscal managers, all of that money we're saving or creating, we invest into healthcare, into education, into infrastructure. People want to make sure we have enough money to take care of healthcare, social services, and other areas. Close quote. There's a couple quick things. Number one, Ontario is the largest indebted sub-sovereign in the world. Number two, he spent like a Marxist during COVID. It was the opposite of fiscal responsibility. Based on what the people want, the people didn't want what he was offering. The idea of fiscal management is something that he is inept at. And it's also interesting that when he talks about his fiscal management, all he lists are socialized programs, healthcare, social services. Like, how do we be
that's
fiscally
what stuck out to
responsible
me.
Conservatives? Socialism.
Yeah.
Socialism is how we are fiscally responsible conservatives.
It just shows you how much
businesses during COVID.
It just shows you how much of a radical idiot Doug Ford is. Like, just unbelievably, he's a stupid man. Like, I actually think he's a dummy. Because I mean, he just promoted, though the Overton window in Canada has been ratcheted left for over 100 years at this point. He doesn't even realize that, as you're making mention, he's promoting radical left-wing views that for the majority of Canadian history were just seen as that. And the idea that the state should be primarily responsible for the economic success of Canadians is itself a statist view. The conservative view is the state should be out of the economy, gone, get rid of them. They shouldn't be involved in picking economic winners and losers. But Doug doesn't know that because he's not a smart man. So don't take advice from dummy. Don't teach me how to Dougie Ford because, I mean, he's bad. He's bad. But apparently he's actually making a shift, right? This is a political maneuver because he's seeing that potentially Poilievre might be on the outs. We'll see what happens. And this is my opportunity to come in.
Federal leadership, yeah.
So essentially what he's saying, what Doug Ford is saying is we don't need a leftist party, a leftist socialist communist party, and a center left party. We need a leftist party and a left party. like Pierre Poilievre, we've talked about, he's no social conservative. And he's apparently, according to Ford, he has nothing good to say about Poilievre ever. And he's glowing whenever he speaks of Mark Carney. So, like,
you see what he said or posted? He's like, yeah, Carney was over my house and we were up till midnight and talking and laughing and having drinks.
I mean, so literally his view of how Canada should be is like the Liberals of 20 years ago, 10, 20 years ago, as the Conservative Party, and then the radical communistic Liberals of today. Those are the two options that Canadians should be forced with. And then the outright communists, like, that aren't trying to hide it in the NDP. Yeah. Like, that's Doug is saying social, like, conservative values, Christian values, there's no place in Canada for them, right? Yeah, that's what he's saying. That's not Canada. There's absolutely no place. Don't look at the coat of arms. Don't look at the, Canada history. Don't look at any of that stuff, Doug. But there's no place for that in Canada, is what Doug's saying. So Sam Oosterhoff, some of these guys in the Ontario Conservative Party in the province there, your premier, your boss, has just said there's no place for those types of views in Ontario. What are you going to do about it? Anyways, so
Can I answer that question quickly?
yes.
Nothing, because they're compromised, and I
Yes.
don't know if they're actually Christians. That's the answer.
And at this
Because
point,
when
you've got to wonder.
when Doug Ford marched in Toronto Pride, Will
Crickets.
Bauma and Sam Oosterhoff, just total flakes.
They
So
weren't
they'll do
silent.
nothing.
They weren't silent when it came to the vax and the mandates and everything for COVID, though. They were absolutely advocating for that.
Well, I think but that was sure in terms of. I think that they understood what needed to be done. That they perceived that was a line, maybe for re-election, but anyways.
Yeah. Anyways, so
Compromised.
so the play here is in Doug Ford's mind, rather than actually having a real conservative alternative in Canada on the actual right, not a devil in the blue suit like you call Polyev, he's saying, no, Canada's got to go all the way to the left.
Devil in a blue dress, not blue suit, blue dress.
Yeah, blue dress. Sorry,
Yeah,
but
that's the reference to the movie and the song "Devil with a Blue Dress." Yeah,
there you go. If I was more pop culture savvy, I would have never made that mistake. But I'm not. Anyways, Doug Ford, the Overton window has to start on the socialist left and go leftward. We have to be a plane with 7 left wings. That, according to Doug Ford. And I think that is how you get stories like this coming out of the major city and a university in Doug Ford's province, having stories like this. I mean, from the ex-Ryerson University, because he was a no good, very bad colonialist who actually created the public system school in Ontario. That was, don't tell Doug this, it might even still be in the legislation, Andrew. You would know more about this. That was founded to forward Judeo-Christian values and religion. I believe that's literally what
I don't know if it's been removed, but I do know that there was a play among the provincial education higher ups to remove that language. It might have been removed. That language might have already been removed.
You should check into
Or
that. I know it existed. Yeah, I know it existed. If it still does,
people wanted it gone.
Yeah, 100%. And you can see why. Anyways, this is from Juno News. Anybody who's been on college campuses, university campuses, this won't come as a surprise, but I think it is shocking for a lot of people who haven't been paying attention. So this is from Juno News. Toronto Metropolitan University, TMU, formerly Ryerson, has remained silent after a Marxist-Leninist group, that you heard that right, operating on campus was recorded pushing for a revolution, class warfare, and a communist dictatorship in Canada. Obviously, we're going to see tons of worried reports from RCMP and the feds about that, right? Not really. Anyways, the group was also heard calling property owners inhuman capitalist beasts. Woo! That's extreme. While at a revolutionary Communist Party meeting titled "How Communists Fight Oppression," hosted at TMU's Victoria building, True North recorded members of the RCP calling for a revolutionary overthrow of liberal capitalist democracy. The group also asserted the necessity of a Leninist Soviet-style dictatorship in Canada. That's going to turn out great. During the talks, one individual, Jacob, stressed the importance of, quote, striking at the heart. I mean, that sounds Marxist. Wow. Striking at the heart of the most radical and committed wing of the pro-Palestine movement, the students. He stressed the importance of staging a protest to shut down campuses altogether and make it impossible for anything productive to happen on campus. Alex McKeever, that's his name, one of the group's members, led the initial talks where he said, "We saw only a fraction of what's possible in the Great Russian Revolution." He noted that the will of the majority can be dismissed outright, but claimed that the RCP speaks for the good of said majority. He disavowed any attempts to achieve socialist goals via reforms or democracy. He doesn't like the evolutionary socialists, despite them actually being successful. He wants revolutionary socialism, as the inhuman capitalist beast class would never allow the proletariat to seize control, he asserted. Anyways, they wouldn't allow him to seize control. That unspent money in the pockets of Canadians should be taken by the majority. So there you go. The state as a form of a thief. There you go. That's what they're. That's what they're advocating. The abolishment of private property. I'm not hearing a lot of hand waving and concern from CBC and other mainstream outlets on the fact that one of Canada's major universities legitimately has a campus group that is a revolutionary communist party that is calling for a Russian style revolution. They're not too worried about that. As we will see, they are worried
Also
about the Christians.
Also not too worried about groups calling for the literal eradication of Jews. That also doesn't bother me.
No. But did you like my dramatic reading as a communist? Was it too over the top?
It could have been a little more Russian.
You
should have had a couple shots of vodka first. And then
Andrew, I told you this many times. I can't do voices. I can't do them. So it would be an insult to our Russian listeners if I were to try and do one.
I don't know how many Russian listeners we have, but if we do,
probably not that many.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I bet you the leftists actually think we only have Russian listeners, right? Like that's how that works. But anyways,
so it's only going one direction, right? It's only going one direction.
Are you paying attention?
And what we're gonna see is, and we were talking about this off air, is even in the media, if you were to stack up the number of World War II themed movies made by Hollywood or TV shows or television series, the ratio of shows that are very anti-Hitler and what he did to shows that are anti-Stalin and what he did, there's no comparison. And the reason is the Marxists who control media and education actually don't oppose Stalin's agenda, but in the same way that Stalin eventually was at odds with Hitler, they need to oppose Hitler. Now, what's sad,
Andrew, there was literally a name for those types of people during the Cold War. After the Second World War, right? They were called pinkos, and right. It was primarily media types and those in Hollywood that were, and academia that were called pinkos because. Yeah. The communist propaganda had thoroughly seeped into those institutions, for sure.
And what's sad is that, as we're going to see, or as we are seeing, that there are some among the actual extreme woke right who will say this is evidence that Hitler was a good guy, and this is why we need to embrace Nazism.
Yeah,
because the enemy of my enemy must be my friend.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to the way we're supposed to look at history, which is evil people can hate one another, but that doesn't make any of them good, even if they hate us, right? Like you don't have to go further than the Old Testament to see Babylon very bad,
mm-hmm.
Syria very bad. Both of them were enemies of Israel, and one destroyed the other.
Mhm.
So just because you have your enemy, just because you have an enemy, another enemy of that person isn't necessarily your friend. So just because the commies hate the Nazis doesn't mean that we should cozy up to the Nazis. But this
Mhm.
will be used now against us. That
Well,
they'll say,
Andrew,
haha, see, we're Marxists and you're fascists,
mhm.
and therefore we now need to oppose you, when we're saying actually we're not like those fascist
Mhm.
woke right red pilled guys, but it's going to be this intensity now, this urgency of we need to come against these Christian nationalists, far right extremists. It's just going to be ramped up more and more.
Yeah, no, and it's you're not exaggerating, right? Like I've literally seen in online spaces the slogan Weimar problems require Weimar solutions, referring to pre Second World War, the Weimar Republic, at the time of the Nazis began to ascend to power, right? So they're essentially saying the decadence, the liberal progressivism of the Weimar Republic that destroyed Germany must be countered by a Nazi revolution. And that is no bueno. That's falling in that dialectical trap that we say, don't do it. And we'll see that
Yeah.
in our last story.
So obviously, if you watch our show, you know that Matt and I are soft on Bitcoin. We buy it, we hold it, and if you listen to us and not to Justin Trudeau and bought a bunch of it when it was not $118,000 American, you'd be laughing a little bit now. But you might be thinking, "Yeah, I don't understand it. It's too confusing. I've been thinking about it, but it's too much for me to get into, and because I don't fully understand it, I'm not going to engage with it." Well, the truth is, Bitcoin isn't just another investment, though it can be. It's also a powerful shield against totalitarianism. So if you've been putting off learning more about Bitcoin because you don't have time to go through all the tutorials, all the guides, Bitcoin Mentor is here for you. Bitcoin Mentor has helped thousands of clients, including political dissidents, learn to confidently secure Bitcoin for themselves and their families. You can book a free strategy session today by going to bitcoinmentor.io/AFF/liberty. The team isn't just knowledgeable about Bitcoin, they are committed to integrity, privacy, and self sovereignty. So take the first step toward protecting your wealth today. Visit bitcoinmentor.io/AFF/liberty and learn how they can help you accelerate your Bitcoin journey, answer your questions with the free strategy session. So everything's been building up to this point in the episode and even in the culture. The European Parliamentary Forum has been working very hard, compiling a substantial amount of research, and actually, like I told you earlier, Matt, actually doing their homework in an effort to show that religious extremism or far right Christian nationalism is on the rise. And that's actually very similar to what the non-binary RCMP officer SS Horseface had to say, that extremism is on the rise when you become more Christian and less woke. Now, our episode's been building to this as it's been building in the broader world. Now, I think that the wokies thought that we would all just lay down and die, right? That we would just accept their agenda and they were going to punish us and imprison us and ostracize us and cancel us. And so, therefore, we would just, take it on the chin. However, we didn't do that. Okay. And for as much as faithful Christians stood their ground and have grown stronger, so too an actual extreme woke right ethnocentrist group, an ethno nationalism, ethno superior group, or as I've coined them, and I trademark this, the young restless and the red pilled. Now, of course, we're all going to get lumped in together by the commies, right? The young restless red pilled, the Nazi sympathizers, and actual faithful Christians who are standing against woke ideology. We will all be lumped in together. Now, this is who they have in mind, by the way, when they release the study, right? Who they have in mind is the boogeyman of the woke right Nazi ethno-nationalist, but who they're actually attacking are the biblical Christians who are trying to obey God's word and do what he commands us to do. Now, we have to be clear that these people are real. This woke right group is real. Their numbers are growing, and the more volume they generate and the more they continue to make their voices heard, the worse it is for us, because we'll continue to be lumped in with them because they won't distinguish between the woke right and the actual conservative Christian right. So just to give you a flavor for what this group looks like, and maybe we'll link to some stuff I've written on it as well. Here's a video of the Jubilee, style video, one person versus 20 other people. And you can see on full display in very unashamed fashion, a self-professing Catholic being quite open about these rather extreme, very far-right, pro kind of Nazi ideas.
I'm for defending the traditional demographics of this country, which is majority white, and should stay that way.
How does the United States... I mean, we've gone so off topic, but how does the United States look like under you? Sorry, what's your name?
My name is, my name's Connor. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Took a little bit of a doubt there.
Oh, well, I use a pseudonym online.
Fair enough.
But fair
Don't be a Connor.
How would Connor's America look? What would it look like?
Well, quite frankly, I think we would deport people who shouldn't be here.
I didn't ask about deporting. What does the government look like?
What does the government look like?
Yeah.
I would say, quite frankly, it's under a sort of benevolent leader, such as
Where does he
Franco.
come from?
It could be a kind of aristocratic class. Could be someone
who picks the autocrat?
Frankly, the people. I mean, we could hold a vote on it. Kings were
isn't that democracy?
Well, sure. You can have a vote to get to that state.
And then no more votes afterwards?
Absolutely.
Wow.
100%.
Wow. And if that autocrat kills you and your family, you're fine with that?
Well, I'm not going to be a part of the group that he kills.
Is he talking about Islamic republics?
Autocrats tend to kill everyone,
Carl
even their own
Schmitt makes
supporters.
this point very well in his work. It's the friend-enemy distinction, right?
Carl
liberals,
Schmitt, the Nazi theoretician.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't care.
Are you a fan of the Nazis?
He was a Nazi political philosopher and a Catholic, so he was a Roman Catholic integralist.
I frankly don't care being called a Nazi.
I didn't say that. I didn't actually say that. I said, are you a fan of the Nazis?
Well, they persecuted the church a little bit. I'm not a fan of that. But
what about the persecution of the Jews?
Well, I mean, I certainly don't support anyone's human dignity being assaulted. I'm a Catholic.
But you don't condemn Nazi persecution of the Jews?
I think that there was a little bit of persecution and
we
stuff
may
like
have
that,
to
which is
rename
bad.
this show because you're a little bit more than a far-right Republican.
Hey, what can I say?
I think you can say, I'm a fascist.
Yeah, I am. Absolutely.
I'm just checking who's clapping just to get my set of where everyone is on this.
Because
you know that millions of people are going to be watching you on YouTube and checking out who the fascists and the Nazis are.
I'm not ashamed of that whatsoever.
No, clearly you're not.
During the pre-war period, prior to World War II, it was only those parties that properly enacted the people's will. That's why they won. The conservatives were fat cats. They were aristocrats.
Are you in favor of killing people who aren't like you?
Quite frankly, I'm not.
You mentioned Franco earlier. Franco killed a lot of innocent people.
Oh, well, he killed communists. He killed people who raped nuns and killed priests.
What about children who he killed and women who he killed?
What are you talking about? He never killed any women or children. He was Catholic,
He only killed combatants. Is that what you're claiming?
Yeah, he only killed combatants.
Never killed any innocent people.
The White Terror was only punishing those people who did acts of terrorism. And again, are you supporting like raping innocent women? Nuns, dude. Killing priests? I mean, priests don't brandish guns and kill people.
You just refuse to condemn the Nazi Holocaust, my friend. I don't think you're in a position to ask anyone any questions.
I just want to point out that Mehdi Hussein is an Islamicist. Like, he's a Muslim. And Muslims are known historically for doing the exact same thing. And the Muslim nations, the Islamic nations, also were allies of Hitler and the Nazis.
I quite frankly don't
That's
care what
historic.
you think about me. If I'm a Nazi and being a Nazi
is mutual,
and being a Nazi means upholding human dignity, because I even believe in your dignity. I don't in a state that I was running. I wouldn't want to hurt you or anything like that. But quite frankly,
I don't debate fascists.
Okay. So do you concede then? I mean, why?
Do I concede you're a fascist who won't condemn the Nazis?
Yeah.
Yes, I concede that.
Okay, great. So I mean, what are we doing here? Because I mean, you just seem
know
offended.
what you're doing here,
You
to be
just seem
honest.
offended, to be quite frankly. Like,
I'm offended by people who can't condemn the Nazis. Yes, I am.
okay. Well, I condemn the evils that they did, but I don't really
Against
care
the
about
Jews?
being. Yeah, sure. I don't care about being called a
Yeah,
Nazi.
sure.
Is the whole thing.
I never called you a
I
Nazi.
care
You
about
called
doing
yourself
the right
a Nazi,
thing.
a fascist, and a General Franco
Well,
supporter.
yeah, I am a General Franco supporter. He was awesome. He was so super cool, quite frankly. Because the whole
And
thing.
you don't believe in democracy.
I don't believe in
What
democracy.
are you doing here at a televised debate?
Because-
This is democracy. I want to debate and disagree.
Because it is the means to.
It's not televised. It's on the internet, and debate doesn't equal democracy, Mitty. You stupid man.
Support an end. The reason we have free speech now is because we want to be openly talking about our opinions so we can get the state that we want. But it doesn't mean
This is
upholding
great.
free speech after we win.
I
mentioned
the only good thing about this
See, that's bad stuff right there.
fascist moment
The
we're in
whole
is that
reason-
you guys are so open about it.
The
It's
whole
great.
reason I
Say
mentioned
the quiet part loud.
the
Keep saying
whole
it.
reason I mentioned Carl Schmitt earlier, and you kind of blew past him, is the friend-enemy distinction.
past him because of the Nazi
even
point.
liberals, when they take power, they want to enact policies and they want to enact protections for their people and their ideas, and they're willing to punish their enemy. And so I'm the same way. I'm like, hey, if you're going to punish me, I'm going to get in power, and I'm going to frankly punish you when you try to leverage power against me.
So, Andrew, this is perfect right there about the dialectical trap and the reactionary revolution that you can find yourself in if you're not biblical. Because what does Jesus say about your enemies, right? So if Connor legitimately looks at the commies and the progressives, who are commies, as his enemies, what does Jesus tell him to do?
Well, you're asking me.
Mm-hmm. What does Jesus tell?
As an individual, we are supposed to love our enemies.
And what does that mean? That's uphold the law of God with respect to that person. Mm-hmm. He's calling for the exact opposite. He's calling for, because they're your enemies, show insane partiality towards them. Mm-hmm. Punitive partiality. That's the way that Connor's talking about. That's completely, totally, and utterly unbiblical. I would just point everybody, we talk about, that we're the virtuous liberty people, kind of pushing back on Bruce Party's book. This is a really helpful compendium of essays from the Center for Cultural Leadership. Dr. P. Andrew Sandlin put it together. It's called Virtuous Liberty. And it actually, some of the later chapters talk about Roman Catholic integralism, which you're seeing here. And they also talk about not being reactionaries, because reactionaries are revolutionaries too. And this is the exact same thing this is exactly what they're putting forward is you cannot, as Christians, fall into this dialectical trap, because if you fall into this dialectical trap, the very societies that you are, talking about making and wanting to forward are exactly the opposite of where you'll actually go with this stuff. And I have a great quote here that I want to pull up, but my fingers are not doing a great job getting me to where I'm going. Okay, here it is. If the new right reactionaries get what they want, it won't be what they claim they're restoring. It'll be an amalgam of an idealized conservative past, which never existed, right? That's what idealized means, and an actual revolutionary present. And that's what we're dealing with. So don't be Connor. And short
don't be
of
Connor,
it.
and then what's just a few quick thoughts on that video before we move on. The first one is, what's the guy's name again? I can't remember his name. Not
Mehdi
Connor, what's the other
Hussein?
guy's name? Yeah, Mehdi. He would probably
Mehdi
consider
Hassan.
himself Hassan. He would probably consider himself like a liberal Muslim, right? He might say that
He's a progressive.
Jihad is the personal spiritual struggle. Okay.
Yeah.
But
exactly.
He would be in utter opposition to what his faith actually purports to believe and the history of it, because he would defend a faith, he would defend a progressive version of it that is just as violent and slave taking and Jew hating as the Nazis were. So number one, so it's ironic.
Well,
Second of all,
Andrew, before you move on, there was actually tape that surfaced of Mehdi Hassan in 2009 talking about the kafar, so the unbelievers, and speaking them as cattle, right? Along the exact same line as Islam. And he spoke very clearly about how he views unbelievers. Now, he issued a bland, silly apology.
Yeah,
but
we call that taqiyya, which is the Muslim practice of deceiving the non-believers so that you make it seem like you're not actually out to kill them.
Yeah.
So that's we call that. But again, the reality is that is he going to speak against Sharia law? Probably not. But it's also, when I'm watching that, what I'm actually watching is, so this is the moment I think we're in, and we're going to move on. I think the moment that we're in right now is, let's go back to World War II. So in World War II, you had the German Nazis, and there's a conflict between them and the Russian socialists. And caught in the middle of that was the confessing church in Germany that remained faithful, that did not bow to the Nazis, did not succumb to their statism and kind of mutation of Christianity, but who also didn't say, okay, but we need to also align with the commies to deal with the Nazis. So I think that's kind of the moment that we're in, where the progressive left, where the wokies, they are the Marxists, they're the communists. And what's risen up now, what's really come to the surface, are the woke right, Nazi sympathizer, ethno-nationalists. And then in the middle are us, are the confessing church Christians that won't go to one side or the other. And interestingly enough, will be the object of scorn by both of those sides, right? So both the Nazis and the socialists came against the church. And both of these sides ultimately set their sights on the Christians, even though those two sides were enemies. So even though the commies and the Nazis are enemies, both of them agreed that we will set our attack on the Christians and on the true church. And I think that's the moment we're in right now, where you have the wokies and you have the commies, and then here in the middle you have the true confessing church that won't bend to either side. And because that's the case, and because we pledge allegiance to Christ, will be the object of attack from both of those sides.
Yes, and it's
hate
primarily
each other, but hate us more, probably.
Yes, it's primarily, Andrew, because of the fact that the Bible has always upheld the dignity of the individual, and it forestalls, it delimits the power of the state. And both fascism and socialism, which are both socialist in basically with a little bit of economic differences, but they're both essentially totalitarian leftist regimes.
Yeah, they both hate the Bible's limiting of their authority.
Yes, exactly. 100%. 100%. And that's why Christians are always targeted. And I think traditionally Jews, who also kind of have a similar kind of view of human dignity, at least, have also been individualists in that sense, against the stifling and authoritative communism and collectivism of parties like fascists and the socialists. So it's bad stuff, man, and dialectical traps.
This very extreme far right, woke right, ethno nationalist group. This is the boogeyman.
Yes.
That's being created by the lefties, saying, "Oh, this is the..." And the problem is, they really do exist. We just saw a video of all the Connorites, so they exist. But what they're going to do is they're going to use them as a straw man to come after what they're calling are religious extremists, which are those who hold to biblical principles.
Jamming.
So that's the bait and switch, right? The bait and switch is, hey, these extremists, these far-right Nazi sympathetic ethno-nationalists who are real, they are the problem. And I agree, they are a problem. But what they're going to do is then, in Indiana Jones fashion, swap them out for us.
Yeah.
Us being people who've held to a long historic faith understanding. So we mentioned the European Parliamentary Forum study, and this is what it's titled: "The Next Wave: How Religious Extremism is Regaining Power." Okay, this is from their study. A new alliance, so this is from the website, a new alliance of religious extremists, far-right populists, and oligarchic funders is reshaping European politics. The Next Wave describes this covert strategic effort to launder religious extremism into mainstream governance through media, NGOs, political parties, and public institutions. Backed by private wealth and legitimized through state funding, this movement is engineering a long-term authoritarian transformation under the guise of tradition and care. This project exposes the financial, political, and ideological architecture of the next wave, equipping civil society to recognize, resist, and counter its growing influence. Philanthropic support is essential to disrupt this emerging infrastructure and defend pluralistic democracy. Now, the problem is, I agree with the danger of the rising new right, of the woke right.
Pluralistic democracy isn't the solution.
But the problem is under the guise of tradition and care. So, but that isn't the guise for us. For us, that actually is.
Yeah.
That actually is our agenda. Our agenda is establishing or reestablishing what has been the case traditionally, because we actually do care about the glory of God, the word of God, the kingdom of God, and we love our neighbors. So that right there, that line right there is the play. The play is this authoritarian movement under the guise of tradition and care. No, the authoritarian movement does exist, but it's not a guise for us. We actually do value tradition and care. So this, before we jump in quickly, I want to talk about the document. Before we read from it, I want to give a little bit of a story. So when you go to
which we will link in the
website,
description below, just so everybody can read it.
We can't link to the document because you have to pay for it, but we have a PDF that we'll share out as well. So basically, you can't. If you go to the website, they're like, "Hey, it's available. You know, you got to pay for it. But if finances are an issue, let us know." So I sent them an email saying, "Hi, I'm a second-year student at UFT, and I'm writing a paper for my post-colonialism
for the
class.
Revolutionary Marxist-Leninist Party."
I didn't say that much. I said I'm writing a paper on my post-colonial theory class, and because I'm a university student, finances are tight, and so I'd love to access your study and use it in my work. And they responded back, so they sent me a free PDF of it, so I have it, and I'm going to share it out. And they said, make sure you send us anything you publish or write. And so I'm going to email back with a link to this episode when it goes live. I think that would be delicious, personally.
You should timestamp the segment too. Just FYI. Anyways,
for them, yeah.
Yes, yeah. Anyways, so what I'm about to read you is from the abstract of the report. A well-researched, we'll give them credit where credit's due. A well-researched 160-page document called "The Next Wave: How Religious Extremism is Regaining Power." So this is it. So this is a groundbreaking report, which is kind of a little embarrassing that that's how they describe their own report, that documents the accelerating financial expansion of movements working to dismantle decades of hard-won sexual and reproductive rights across Europe. I mean, you know what they're talking about there. Covering, so this is, Andrew, this is like you've talked about. This is the socialist progressive commies trying to fight back. Like, we thought we won this. Don't come at us. Anyways.
Yeah, we're the only ones that are allowed to revolution.
Yes, we're the revolutionaries.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
We're the only ones that can tear down systems and dismantle them. How dare you do that, is what they're saying.
Yeah. And they're all for, like, the George Soroses of the world manipulating human action through the alchemy of finance, right? They're okay for that.
Hello. This was put together by the European Union.
Yes.
What are you talking about? You want to talk about the center of financial power in Europe? Hello.
I know. It's so crazy. It's so crazy.
It's so ironic.
Anyways, let's continue. Their words again. Covering the 2019 to 2023 period, it builds on prior analyses of the anti-gender movement presented in Tip of the Iceberg 2021, probably riveting reading, and Restoring the Natural Order 2018. Unprecedented in scope, which we'll give them, the next wave offers a detailed account of the financial trajectories of over 270 anti-rights and religious extremist actors in Europe. You can take them at their word on that. There's no straw manning. Anyways, tracing their growing access to political power, professionalization, international networking, and in some cases, their capture of entire institutions. Is that a bad thing? Revolutions that infiltrate institutions and take them over?
We're the only one. Hold on a second. We're the only ones that are allowed
to do the long marks through the institutions.
We're the only ones that are allowed to take over institutions. How dare you do that?
Yeah. So apparently, Andrew,
that's our thing.
Yeah, apparently they're capturing entire institutions, political parties, and states. It also exposes emergent strategies, including the production of ideologically driven knowledge, the establishment of anti-gender service infrastructures, which is so ideologically supposed. It's anyways, and the rise of elite public affairs firms and civil society fronts covertly directed by religious hierarchies. The next wave is essential reading for understanding how sexual and reproductive rights in Europe are being strategically eroded and what must be done to defend both these rights and democratic governance. Listen how they frame that, Andrew. Listen how they frame all the stuff that's going on and rewrite history in the process. This is amazing. This also comes to, we've already seen it. We know how they're setting things up. We know how they're jamming. We see their play. This is propaganda, but listen to what they have to say. The next wave is an organized counter-revolution unfolding all over Europe. While it presents itself as a return to traditional values of the imaginary past that never existed, it is in fact the seizure of the future. This report provides a fascinating in-depth analysis of how this is happening and gives valuable ideas about what we can all do to ensure that our hard-won rights endure. Here are some of the crazy far-right organizations that they list for us. The American Center for Law and Justice, Alliance Defending Freedom, that's the ADF, very, very good people doing amazing work, and the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association, just to name some of the most ridiculous ones. Essentially, they track funding, especially state funding, for these groups they label as extreme. They look at the activities of these organizations and they conclude how to dismantle these groups and create their uber queer utopia, which of course, Andrew, is not ideologically driven and just totally the state of nature, and they're the centrists and, not the ideologues. Anyways,
I
that's
love how they say that what we're doing is that the next wave is a counter revolution which presents itself as a return to traditional values of the imaginary past that never existed. Like, you do realize that the Reformation happened in Europe, right? Like, you understand that
yeah.
this is a past that did exist. Like, you understand the Magna Carta, and you understand Alfred the Great. And
They
you
probably don't
understand,
actually know this stuff, Andrew.
that's
To
what I mean,
be fair,
it's not an imaginary past. That's what I mean. It's not. They're saying this never existed. It's just a grab for the future. I'm like, no, what it is. It's and this is projection. No, you're the revolutionaries who are trying to establish a past that has not existed before, and you're trying to make seizure for the future. But we're actually saying, no, there is a rich history that we're trying to restore. So they're projecting and being completely disingenuous.
Oh yeah. It's a revolutionary Marxist group of individuals trying to strawman and broad brush and jam, right? Because they're pointing to guys like the Connors of the world to then bring in
and
the
ADF.
the
Billy Graham Evangelistic Association.
Exactly, which is like pretty milk toast as far as like that stuff is concerned, right? So that's the spectrum, right? That's how they're jamming, right? They're pointing to Connor as being the really bad guy, and that's the boogeyman. That then they're just smuggling everyone else under that same broad brush umbrella. Yeah. You can see the play. It's not well hid. It's pretty out in the open, but it's something that we have to be aware of for sure.
So this is how they conclude the report. Again, it's 160 page. There's graphs and infographics and stats and numbers, and we'll try to find a way to share the PDF with everyone.
Read it at double speed. Anyways,
this is how they conclude their report. The anti-right and religious extremist movement isn't just ideologically. By the way, when they say anti-right, they mean anti like rights and freedoms, not anti-political right. Okay, so the anti-rights and religious extremist movement isn't just ideologically loud; it's financially armed. From Moscow to Washington, Brussels to Budapest, money is doing the heavy lifting in reshaping laws, policies, and public norms around gender, sexuality, and reproductive rights. And it's coming from all directions. The anti-gender movement today is a well-oiled, multi-layered political force reshaping societies across Europe and beyond. This transformation plays out clearly across 5 key dimensions. So here they are. First, religious activism has moved from lofty ideals to the corridors of power. Second, the civil society landscape has been radically reorganized. Third, the far-right populist political parties, with Hungary at the forefront, have become the power centers for the movement. Fourth, the movement's intellectual and media machinery is growing rapidly. Finally, the movement has become a geopolitical weapon. In short, this is a sophisticated, multi-dimensional movement that combines religious fervor, political strategy, institutional power, knowledge production, and international influence to roll back decades of progress on gender and sexual rights. Combating it means exposing the full scope of its networks, from grassroots NGOs to shadowy lobbying firms and state actors, and reinforcing the commitment to human rights and gender equality at every level. For as much as this thing is well researched, do they not realize that the wealthiest people in the world are all lefties? And do they not realize that the legacy media is controlled by the left and all of the academy is controlled by the left? Like, what they're saying, basically saying, oh, Joe Rogan and this new and the podcasts are so dangerous.
It's the pot calling the kettle black. The revolutionary Marxist calling
it's funny when
other
they say-
people
when they say-
revolutionaries.
When they say Hungary is at the center of it, what they mean is it's only Hungary. Like, let's start listing off European countries. Okay, so yes, Italy has elected someone who's, I mean, even though she's pro sodomy and she's pro murder of preborn babies. So I don't know. I mean, just because she's against.
Well, on that note, Andrew, before you get
sorry, no, my bad. She doesn't oppose digital ID, but she does oppose trans stuff. Right. So, but so
Andrew,
like this idea of
Andrew, on that note, before you get too far afield, you can really see who their God is, right? Their God is sexual promiscuity, perversion of all matter of types, and the euphemistic term reproductive rights, which means sacrificing your children for Gaia or something of the sorts, or wealth or whatever it might be, right? They want to kill children and have sex with whomever they want in whatever way they want to,
and cut off all the body parts they want of children. Yeah.
Because that's their view of liberation. That's their view of freedom and a good society, and they see anybody who's coming against that as the most anti-right people that could ever exist.
But yeah, so it's I don't know what world they're living in, but it's not reality, obviously.
Progressive echo chamber, also known as the EU.
Right. But this is going to be, I mean, this was put together by the EU. Like, this is a big deal. But again, they are creating boogeymen, because Europe, I mean, how many European countries would actually, Hungary, and they list Russia at one point, which I find it so interesting that that apparently I thought, there's no rhyme or reason to who the enemies are and who the bad guys are. Like the goalposts and the lines are constantly shifting, because Russia historically represents the ideologies that they would support, but now Russia's a bad actor because Vladimir Putin isn't as woke can be. So this is a growing sentiment, right? We were talking about this the other day, that hit piece that they put out on Doug Wilson and the guys in Moscow, Idaho, about the rise of Christian nationalism. There was that piece from the Tyre recently, or the Tyee, about Christian nationalism, and CBC and their report a couple years ago. So it's just, it appears that there's a ramping up of, this growth of Christian nationalism is very, very dangerous and scary, and they should lose their funding, and they should, we need to keep an eye out for them. That'll continue to grow. That'll continue to swell in the culture.
I mean, you just had an interview to that end, which people, if you want to become a paid subscriber over at ldcanada.substack.com, we would suggest you do that, because you can get the interview with Andrew and our friend Barry Bussey, who's a lawyer who, this is his expertise. He deals with charity law, and there's a real move afoot in Canada to deny or take away or, obstruct charitable status to Christian groups that are seen to go after the very rights that are the god of this pluralistic, democratic, demonic, progressive system that we're dealing with, right? Like this is this is how the communists, how the leftist progressives, the wokies are pushing back in places like Canada, but also the EU and all places around the world. And again, I think this should really, this is happening in the EU. This is a report from the EU. Canadians could kind of slough it off. But what have we seen with our prime minister? Canada's the most European, non-European country. He's making deals left, right, and center with the EU. We said it on this program, not like maybe last episode, which was a couple of weeks ago. We're more likely to be the 28th country of the EU than the 51st state in America. Let's be honest, that's where Canada is. And the way that Mark Carney talks about this stuff is he does it in a very sneaky way. He's right when he's talking about climate change, he says, well, we have to move towards a just transition on the climate because that's what the world wants. That's the way things are going. We have to impose a carbon tax because if we don't impose a carbon tax, we won't be able to do business with Europe because they require a carbon tax. What he's not telling you is that it's guys like him and the WEF and all these people who are putting this arbitrary, silly rules in place to forward their agenda. You know, Mark, have you thought about saying, oh, maybe the government has no business dictating how many EVs should be sold on the market at any date, regardless of how silly it is that it's like 2030, right? It's right around the corner. But this is how they do it, right? We've talked about this. This is how they smuggle these WEF programs and ideologies in, is they promote them at these supranational conferences. They then give them to business leaders and politicians in various jurisdictions around the world. And then they go in and they say, well, so we can move, the whole world's moving this way. So this is our justification. This is the predicate to say, well, Canada better move in that direction. So we're just playing along. If we don't do it, we're going to be left behind. So we're just being pragmatists. We're just going with the flow. But meanwhile, what they're doing is they're smuggling the most radical, progressive, Marxist worldview into our nation and its laws in such a way that the conservatives in Canada, like Doug Ford, are so duped that they believe that the only side of the Overton window that can exist in Canada is the left side, away with everything that's right of Bill Clinton? John Chrétien's probably too conservative for the conservatives now. Let's be honest. That's where we're at.
So the encouragement for you, if you're listening, is it appears that there is a ramping up of hostility toward the biblical Christian as we're being lumped in with the extreme woke right guy. And so that's coming. And so the tendencies are either to bow to the left to avoid their fury, or to be tempted to imbibe the ideology of the woke right, to say, yeah, well, we're the one that's been oppressed, and actually we need to relook at history and redefine it. And so the encouragement for you is, as I've already said, find yourself in the middle as a member of the confessing church. Don't bow to the lefties. Don't bow to the wokies. Don't bow to the Nazis and the Nazi sympathizers on the woke right. But understand that both of them are going to hate you and despise you. And be faithful to Christ. Don't react, and don't give in, but faithfully endure in your community, and the Lord will bless your obedience. That's the challenge for you. Don't fall into one of these two traps. Don't become an unhinged skeptic about all things, but also don't bend to the left, and be faithful, and the Lord will bless it.
Yeah. Don't be what they say that you are when they're apparently caricaturing you, right? Like, and that's what I've seen, that tendency in some guys. Well, if they're going to call me, and you saw it in Connor, right? If you're going to call me a Nazi, if you're going to call me a racist about like everything, I might as well just be one, right? Like,
Yeah.
and that's silly. Don't become what your enemies say that you are when they're caricaturizing you. Become who you are meant to be in the Lord Jesus Christ as the first fruits of a new humanity, empowered by the Spirit of God, progressively being transformed bit by bit into the image of the true man, the Lord Jesus Christ. That's our call. That's what where we have to go as Christians, and we have to avoid these dialectical traps, because ultimately the problem with these dialectical traps are they're not founded upon the norm of God's word, right? And that's where we have to get back to, and that's what we have to promote. And that way, the way of the truth in the Lord Jesus Christ is narrow, and we don't want to be found on either side of it, because both sides end up in a ditch called Gehenna. Don't go there, friends, whether it's on the left or the right. Walk according to Christ, because for freedom that Christ has set you free. Stand firm and do not submit again to a yoke of slavery. Till next time, everybody, God bless you.
Liberty Dispatch has been brought to you by SDG Media. If you want to stay in touch with us on all things Liberty Dispatch, join our email list, or support the show, head over to ldcanada.substack.com.